My name is Beth Carpenter. I'm the CEO of Educational Community Alliance Credit Union. With us this afternoon, we have Todd Moore again from Trinity Debt Management. He is going to enlighten us with information regarding Don't Get Scammed. Again, we are very fortunate to have Todd's expertise and be able to provide a lot of resources for our members. This is kind of an ongoing webinar that we have available. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Todd. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much, Beth. Thank you. And thank you to everyone who is joining us this afternoon. We appreciate your time. Have a lot planned for us this afternoon as we think about ways to prevent fraud and scams. Again, I'm Todd Moore with Trinity Debt Management. It's great to be back with everyone and with the credit union. So we have so many things taking place in terms of fraud and scams. It's just evolving through time. What I thought we would do today is highlight some of those areas where you can be on guard and provide you some useful tips to keep fraudsters from obtaining your information to commit fraud and to cause or wreak havoc on your credit or other financial other parts of your financial plan. So we have a lot to cover. One thing I like to do is just talk about some of the current statistics. I wanted to start with credit because, as you see here, the Federal Trade Commission, as they gather statistics and just look at different types of fraud and scams that are occurring in the market, credit card fraud remains a top concern. And you'll see in the coming slides, there's all sorts of variation on how fraudsters and others have gotten creative over the last few years just through AI and technology. But credit card fraud, I thought we'd start there because this is a top concern. Here we have nearly 330,000 cases. That was just between January and September of last year. And this area also, you can see the range here. Everything for the ages range from 20 all the way up to 50. I mean, that's a pretty broad range, and it reflects a lot of our online activity and just the presence of making purchases and online activity broadly with how we use technology. So credit card fraud remains a top concern, and I'm going to show you ways that we can be careful not to be a victim of fraud. So just to kind of go through some of these, various approaches to credit card fraud. First party fraud itself. Now, this is one where someone is going to use a credit card. They have no intention of ever repaying that debt. And basically, they'll make purchases that were fraudulent. And then there's no chance that this is ever going to be repaid. We see this sometimes when I'm looking at credit reports and pulling things for others here in Cincinnati. One of the things that I often find is this can be aligned in terms of fraud, even within the family. Someone uses a credit card, they make those purchases, family or not, it's still fraud. New account fraud, which is pretty evident. This is when someone uses stolen information and open a new account, use fraud. This is kind of probably the oldest version of this, but it still exists where folks are using credit cards with stolen information. Existing account fraud, using it without card holders' permission. Again, this would be falling into that area, maybe even into the area of identity theft. In that first instance, and then existing card fraud, this again, someone using information or even in the family, it's still fraud. And that's what we'll see in many cases as we get towards the end. Credit card fraud in particular, what I've seen in practice so often where it becomes whether someone steals information, that's one scenario. But in many cases, these types of fraud, I find it can be very related to family and neighbors that happen to steal information depending on where you're at. There's no limit to how creative folks can be when it comes to doing this type of fraud. So we want you to be on guard and always aware of your credit card information. So this kind of just makes the point. Stealing credit cards, that's the one that we see that's the old school method. It still exists. Card skimming, where we see this, This is where a machine actually will skim information, copies information from a credit card. So when you're swiping a credit card or inserting a credit card, this is where that information can be hacked, essentially, can be stolen. Some of the common methods that we see, and you may even have seen some of these in your area. I know here in Cincinnati, we had scammers that had skimming machines at gas station pumps, which you wonder how would that take place, but that was somehow folks were able to use a skimming machine to do that. You see this in other instances as well, but the cases where I've seen most of this occur is oftentimes at gas pumps, oddly enough. But there's all sorts of variation on this as well, with just using a device to obtain your personal information or to hack that credit card number to be able to use that type of information for fraud. Phishing or taking over accounts. Phishing, I'm sure that if you have followed any literature on fraud itself, sending these emails to try to gather information on your credit card information, a fake e-commerce site, or just stealing information when you place an order, which is one of the reasons why we always want you to be cautious with online purchases. And I'm going to show you some ways to really hone in on those details that you're shopping to make sure you're looking at the browser and security features within your online purchases so that this doesn't take place. But phishing remains a major problem with credit card fraud. And then digital wallets. Again, you set up an account online. Folks will try to trick you into sharing information, or others will get in if you don't have password protected accounts that have, we'll talk about multi-step authentication to making this a little more complicated. Getting into those accounts, trying to figure out or trick you into sharing that information, they actually will go in and take over an account. So those methods still are there. And these have been around for a number of years. I think even myself, having looked at these types of fraud for a number of years, it's still shocking how it continues. And you see that represented in the FTC statistics as well, how it remains a top concern. So I wanted to point out on this slide a couple of things in terms of this credit card fraud, what we call synthetic account fraud. I thought this was one that we should probably spend a little time on. So we're aware of creating identities or stealing credit card information. Those kind of I call them the perennial issue at this point. They've been around for a long time. But synthetic account fraud, it's different. This is one where it's a combination of using both real and fabricated information. So what happens in this case is they will use a real social security number, perhaps, or they obtain information to open lines of credit with a false name. So it's a combination of false and real identity, what we call synthetic, this fabricated identity that's occurring. What's interesting here on this particular fraud, whereas you would see other types of fraud committed maybe to make purchases or to shop online, stealing or creating identities, I thought it's interesting here that they'll spend time building credit with a synthetic identity. So again, it's this combination of real and fabricated information, and using a false name and some real information about perhaps Social Security, other types of information to either open loans, benefits. But in this particular case, I actually had an instance of this with one of my colleagues at work. What happened was synthetic fraud had occurred on his account. And while he was checking one of his accounts, just doing a credit report, just kind of looking through as we talk about the importance of credit reporting itself, happened to find this. Someone was using an account he didn't know, and they were paying the bill, but certainly he had never opened that account. So synthetic account fraud, all the more reason for us to be on the call today and to continue to monitor and evaluate our credit report. And I'll share more information with that about that here soon. So what are the warning signs? So we know these types of approaches, so many different approaches that folks can take. So what are the warning signs? And So in the synthetic account case, that's the one that kind of flies under the radar. The intention there is that you don't pay attention to the purchases. So as you're looking through your accounts, anything that's unfamiliar, card transactions, things that just don't add up, things that fall out of the patterns that you typically would do for yourself or your family. So anything that just starts to see with transactions, just any kind of transaction history, credit card, debit card transactions, when those things don't appear to add up, that's a red flag. Then small dollar transactions used to test, whether or not you're aware that those transactions are actually taking place. This is the instance with my colleague in synthetic fraud. These were small purchases, again, kind of flying under the radar, an account that was opened, not really aware that that account was opened. There was really no warning sign in that case. But when he did catch this as a problem, there were lots of these examples of small purchases quickly paid off. And again, someone was using that in some ways to obtain credit, build credit, and just kind of flying under the radar so that there was no large transaction that really stood out. And that was the intention: commit the fraud without anyone even knowing it. And then obviously any unauthorized activity. I know that credit unions, banks certainly were doing a much better job of notification, but if you do see any unauthorized account activity, certainly that's what we want you to report. We want to be able to help you through that. Or if you're receiving calls, and this is where fraud really gets tricky, receiving calls about transactions. I'm going to show you here in the coming slides that folks know that when you're off guard or you may believe that you've been a victim of fraud, that's when some folks use that to their advantage to actually create fraud at that point. So these are just in summary some of the warning signs that you'll see, but I would encourage you again to pay attention to those small dollar test cases. Those are the ones that I really find interesting. Some of those other ones are pretty self-evident if a large purchase is made, but so often with synthetic fraud and some of the recent statistics, the idea is just to fly under the radar so that you're not aware that fraud is taking place. So how do we avoid all of this taking place? What are some of the steps that we can take? And give you some practical tips here that you can use, try to mitigate some of these, keep us out of trouble, how we can avoid making some of these common mistakes. So tapping a credit card, contactless payment options. So this is one that is a safer approach than actually swiping the card or inserting the chip-based card. Just tapping the card. This for the skimming devices that are often used, those devices don't work when we're tapping a card. So if there's any hesitation there about using that information, or if you have questions about the safety or security of contactless payments options, actually is a very secure way of doing transactions, and in fact can keep these skimming devices from being effective. Just renders them ineffective. So contactless payment options are one approach that you can take. Updating your devices, whether this is a mobile phone or your computer, if here we are online right now. If it's been a while since you've actually updated your malware on your computer, I want to encourage you to do that. To be honest, all of us are busy. I think this is an easy one to overlook. I try to do that. Occasionally I run behind myself. So it's good that we're talking about this now. It nudges me forward for things that maybe I've overlooked myself. But if you get an update on your phone or you're seeing things on the computer itself, asking you to update and make those timely updates, make certain you do. That's a safe way to keep your computer updated and to avoid folks using malware or other creative ways to hack into your system and steal information. And then a security freeze for your credit report. Oftentimes in some of those earlier cases that we talked about, whether it's someone stealing a card or you have concerns about folks having access to cards, I mean, honestly, I've worked with so many scenarios, couples that were together and broken up, and all sorts of family issues I've seen over the years doing this work. If you have any of those concerns, place a security freeze on the account. You can do that very simply, and you want to do that across all three bureaus. It is free. It only takes a couple minutes to place that security freeze on the report itself. It will lock the credit report. And then as you're ready to go into obtaining credit or asking folks to evaluate your credit, you can remove that credit freeze. But it's an additional way to protect your account and to keep others out of your credit data. So a few other suggestions here, obviously sharing any type of information. So this is whether it's text or email. We're going to talk about robocalls and look at some other ways. But the idea is when we're thinking about fraud, remember, the intention is to catch us off guard. Okay. And also maybe there's some underlying issues financially or other things you're dealing with, could be personal. Maybe in some cases, there's just certain situations where maybe you're just not prepared for that call. And it's when you're most vulnerable and off guard that, you can make a mistake like this. But if anyone contacts you and asks for information, and particularly when they're saying that it's fee-based or asking you to make an immediate response, you should be on guard, okay? Because financial services, other services that you're paying for, they're not asking for a payment at that moment. Someone's not asking you to take action at that very moment. So those are always indicators that something is not right. So just don't share your information when someone contacts you about having that urgency to either make a payment or take some type of action. We talked about keeping your accounts secure, but again, reference 2 points here for you, password manager or multi-factor authentication. I would strongly encourage you, most of the time now, so many websites now and almost nudge us forward to making some type of multi-factor approach. They will even ask that we change our password on a could be every 3 months or 60 days. It's kind of set up in a way that it almost forces us into that approach. If you're not doing that, and not all websites have that function, if you're not doing that, I would encourage you to do that, because keeping things updated and changing that password through time, it is one of the best things that you can do to keep folks out of your accounts. And then lastly here, any type of online shopping. I'm going to show you in a few slides some indicators to look for security and things that you can look at very simply to make sure that when you're shopping online, that those websites are safe and that can be trusted. I'll show you that here in just a moment. So want to shift gears here for just a moment and now go into some of the types of scams. This is not an exhaustive list by any means. Just in preparing today, I've just gathered a handful of scams that are currently in the market, things that I looked at from the FTC and some other references for you. I'll share with you some that I think are important, but this by no means is an exhaustive list. So credit repair scams. I chose this one because when folks have had issues with credit, I work in credit, been doing this a long time. This again, scams take place when we're most vulnerable or caught off guard. So sometimes in situations where folks have had some bad credit or job loss or other things have taken place, they've had some issues that maybe were discharged or just had some problems with old accounts that they didn't pay. So credit repair scams take place because they prey on that person who may have had something, or that maybe they just want to cast a wide net to see if they can catch people and that maybe have had some type of issue. What they do is they promise to remove negative information from your report, essentially making promises that they can never keep. The key here again is they're asking you, it's a fee-based approach and asking you to take action. They tell you not to report anything to or not to contact the credit reporting agencies. They're just going to take care of everything for you. But these types of scams can really get folks into a lot of trouble. The idea here again is to get you to make payments towards something. It's never going to get paid off. Make promises about disputes and things that cannot be done. So you want to work with the credit union, work with Trinity, work with a nonprofit that's going to be reputable. If you have any type of credit questions. So just be cautious about those upfront fees or folks just promising you with some type of credit repair scam. These have been around for a while and they continue to be around for a reason. So credit repair scams, just be on guard. Student loan scams, you probably had one of these calls, even if you didn't have a student loan. At some point, you've probably had a robocall or something. These were very, very prominent during the COVID period. They're kind of evolving now with student loan scams because at this point, the Department of Education is kind of in flux and the student loan programs are all changing. Folks are coming back into the student loan market. And I can tell you that I've worked with a lot of folks here in Cincinnati that are continuing to struggle with student loans. But 2.6 million fraud reports in 2023, and they continue into 23 and 25. We've still seen different variations of this. Basically, this is saying act immediately, student loan forgiveness program. That was how this started. Now they're saying, hey, we can push you into a different program. Department of Education is going to be closing. Your loan's been flagged for forgiveness or for a special promotional offer. None of these things are true. It's a false promise. But basically, where this is effective is so many folks have had some type of student loan issue. So what we want to look for here is the Department of Education is never going to ask for passwords or upfront payments or to ask you to go into certain accounts for urgent action and call now. You may get calls on student loans, but that's the nature of that call is going to be very different. Again, not asking you for any type of information or payment upfront, upfront monthly fees to where they can move you into a program. Those things you do through a process, not through a phone call. So student loan scams, be on guard for those. They're evolving at this point, but we certainly don't want you to be a victim of this type of fraud. Similarly, these government impersonation scams are really hot right now, where folks are, IRS, Social Security, Medicaid. It's a big one here is unpaid taxes. Again, this is where they will call from a 202 DC area code. They'll trick you into thinking that they're a valid source. They're going to demand payment. And you'll start to see this common theme, fee-based, act now. If you keep those 2 points in mind, it's going to save you a lot of headaches. But in this case, they may say, hey, we can offer you an offer to get out of your IRS debt or something with Social Security. Medicare scams are big right now. But again, they call, could be a robocall, could be someone else calling on the other line where you actually pick up and talk to that person, but they're trying to trick you in to giving some type of information or a payment, wire transfer, something of cash value that is somehow going to eliminate an underlying issue or save you from some type of further action against you. It's not true, but these are types of scams that we find with government impersonation. Now, for our older folks, those who are maybe concerned about some of the new technological advancements here with different types of AI, I'll put myself into the older adult camp on this one myself. Phishing and some of the other scams, I'm aware of those types of things, but AI is just evolving faster than I can keep up. Certainly my kids probably know more about AI than I do, but this is where these types of scams, you can see some of these are a little more obvious and some of them are getting, this is where I think we really have to be very cautious in the future of how this will look. This is the future probably of many scams. Voice cloning, deep fakes, fake websites, these are all types of using, in the case of voice cloning, so this is where you see someone talking, they place someone else's voice and image over that. It looks very realistic. Asking, sometimes you see this in nonprofit circles, asking you to make donations on behalf of nonprofits. I know that folks that I went to church with, and they had some issues with, again, when we're most vulnerable, act now, we're raising money. Voice cloning was used for a scam where people made credit card transactions to help children, and they were scammed. Deep fake scams. This is where videos, photos, audio clips are manipulated through technology, impersonating public figures, celebrities, to ask you to, uh, take action or purchase some type of product or service. Again, they get your information, another type of scam. And then fake websites. This is a really tricky one. And honestly, some of these are getting to the point where if you're not going to do a little additional work, you may fall into this camp of just getting scammed. What they do is they'll set up, some of these are investment opportunities. They're not always going to fall into just the financial services camp. I'll show you that here in a few moments. But the idea is that you create a fake website that looks just like any other website. Now, in financial services, that's one thing, but what about all the routine things that we do? Cable companies, cell phone bills, I mean, all those sorts of things. Those also can fall into a lot of different types of AI technology type of scams where they're manipulated to look like a real site. So I wanted to share with you, there's what's called Trend Micro Scam Check. You can buy this through the App Store or Google Play. But you basically snap a picture and it will pull up. It checks the certificate. If you have questions about those, and I don't think the program is very expensive, but it is one that, if you're doing a lot of online shopping, you're doing a lot of online transactions, and maybe you're just worried about fake websites, this Trend Micro Scam Check might be a good option for you. The investment of $30-$40 into that program could wind up saving you a lot of money. The grandparent scam. This one was hot for a while. It comes back in different forms, but this is where you try to exploit a scam that's trying to exploit. Could be something they impersonate, or they call on behalf of, hey, someone in your family has a medical emergency. It could be bond, it could be rent, repairs. It's a long list of things that they try to do, but they target family members and they try to, again, obtain some type of payment. Same pattern that we see over and over again, fee-based or cash transaction, or asking you to act now. The idea is that they want to pretend that there's some type of underlying problem or that there's some type of distress. They can help remedy this problem. Just give them the cash, let them know how to get this person out of some situation. You scratch your head sometimes and you look at this and you say, wow, how can that be the case? But again, I've seen seniors in this particular case get scammed, particularly in around the holidays with this particular approach. This was one that I seen around the holiday season, Christmas, the New Year, where again, folks are either raising money or asking for funds to do charitable or volunteerism, some type of social good. But the grandparent, it doesn't always have to fall into an emergency. This could also be something where they just target grandparents, seniors asking for some type of transaction to take place. So be aware of the grandparent scam. Then financial services scams. This is where, again, all sorts of variation on this, but this could be folks calling that you want to correct an account, or you're having overdraft or some type of financial services scam. And they're going to ask you to make a demand of some type of payment, what we call a peer-to-peer platform, Cash App, Zelle, PayPal. They want something to secure. These types of scams, financial services, mortgages, banks, the credit union, they're not going to call up and ask for that type of payment through any of these platforms. So if any of these things are taking place, and someone sounds like they're in the, from the credit union, certainly that Cash App, Zelle, or PayPal is not aligned to anything that the credit union would be doing for a line of business. But outside of that, just the number of things that can take place here with kind of variation on this theme, all the different types of financial services, whether it's insurance, banking, your investments, whatever it might be careful about these types of things. Scammers know how to target us to secure something, to make something go away. Again, same pattern. Now, earlier I talked about these tech, ways that AI is using these deep fakes for routine things. So I pulled this example from the FTC. This is where we see a Netflix account. So if you notice here, and this is really interesting because I actually had one of these sent to my email boxes. So this was sent, I had something sent. This was not from my personal account, but I did some research on it. Turns out that this was a tech support scam that was kind of going around. So we do have a Netflix account here at the house. My wife and kids like to watch movies sometimes. We have Netflix. So here in this account, this one is saying, it's asking you to fix an issue with your Netflix account. So they want to update your account and ask for some type of payment for tech support. Now, I remember, about a month ago getting a similar type of thing in my account where it says the account was on hold. I knew that wasn't the case because we had just paid the account. And I just kind of looked at it and I didn't pay any other attention to it. And then in doing some of this work, preparing for our presentation today, I figured out that this was a scam that was going around. I probably, if I hadn't have just paid that account, I may have opened this up in some way, and it's hard to say what would have happened. So, again, these types of scams, these tech support scams can happen to any of us. So if you get something like this in your email or something popping up for tech support, do the additional work to make sure that this is legitimate. I would contact Netflix or contact a servicer with any of these tech support issues that you may have, as opposed to just going right in and saying, I'm going to correct it. Again, we might look at grandma or grandpa and, wow, how did you guys make that mistake? Any of us can fall into these mistakes. This is one tech support scam. You want to be able to see that the kids are watching a movie. You go in, next thing you know, you've fallen for a scam yourself. So it's not age related. Robocalls, I hinted at those earlier. We talked a little bit about those, so I won't go through those now. But robocalls now, I just wanted to let you know that you're going to see a lot of these going around at this point. All sorts of types of robocalls and scams. We talked about the 202 area code. Those are still continuing. IRS, student loans, just that 202 area code in general. You see a lot of robocalls going around. Fundraising scams with robocalls. Support, party A or B, whether you're Democrat, Republican, whatever it might be. Sending out robocalls, trying to get folks to do this, trying to do this on the fundraising side. We see that taking place a lot too. If you have questions on those things and you want to make a contribution, it'd be better to contact an organization directly that you believe in, make that contribution, rather than giving information out through a robocall. So we've covered a lot of ground there. So what do we do now just to kind of protect ourselves through this process? Shared with you some tips on credit cards and ways to handle that. Presented several different options there as far as being wary about all the different types of fraud. What I can say here is that when we're receiving phone calls or online messages, whatever it may be, just absolutely operate with caution, okay? We don't want to get scammed. And so if you have any kind of concerns about that, the person on the other end of the line, just be assertive. You can always hang up that call. Again, what sounds too good to be true is going to be, it's never going to add up. What sounds too good to be true is not true. So we want to be very cautious about that. Protect your information. You know, I've talked about ways to do that through multi-factor authentication, updating your passwords, updating your malware. You know, here got phone setting out, keeping those updates as well. If you see something there and it hasn't been updated for a while, you just kind of overlooked it, make sure that you keep everything updated. And then trust your instincts. You know, when something doesn't quite feel right, you want to turn and walk away. Um, this can be very tricky, as I said, with technology and the way that things are evolving. The folks that are doing this type of fraud always want to catch us when we're off guard. So just be careful. Again, if it's fee-based and asking you to act now, those are the two red flags. I want to continue to hit on that theme so that you know not to be a victim of fraud. We talked a little about this in terms of your antivirus software, keeping that update, your phone update. But I wanted to show you down here at the bottom about verifying security certificates on websites. So there's ways that we can do this. You can, if you remember, those fake technology sites or the AI generated sites can really be deceiving. I nearly fell probably for one myself. What can we do to kind of get in there and look at the details to make sure that these accounts are legitimate? So here, there's a little padlock. You can see that circled in red. That tells you that the connection is secure. You'll see this oftentimes if you want to check about the browser itself to find out if your connection is secure. You can click on that and make certain that that is a secure connection. Make sure that your account here is actually secure. And then the certificate itself. So a website should be issued to, where is it held? You can actually look at the identity from a computer to find out whether or not that those websites, when they're created, how they were created by looking at the certificate. So if you go in here, click on that information here where it's under the general tab on a website, go in and scroll through. If you want to go in there for sites that you don't know if you trust that information, you can actually look at some of those. And in the URL itself, sometimes HTTPS, the S was secure. But these indicators on websites, that can tell you a lot. But this certificate information really tells you some details about the website itself, where you can verify whether or not this information is legitimate. So we'll close now with just kind of looking at the impact of fraud and some steps that you can take if you have been a victim, or just ways to handle a situation if anything like this ever happens to you. So with credit cards itself, get asked a lot about this. Well, am I liable for all this? What happens? Well, Fair Credit Billing Act, if you catch it within 60 days, then it's $50. We also have what's called zero liability. That's within 30 days. So catching this fraud at that 30 to 60-day window is very, very important. Again, with synthetic fraud, where this gets tricky is folks are using your account, flying under the radar. So those types of situations, that's very tough if things have gone on for a while, and how that works with synthetic fraud. So Fair Credit Billing Act is certainly something that we want to use if you feel that there's been an issue, but you always want to report that to your card issuer if you ever feel that there's an issue with any type of credit card fraud. One part of the Fair Credit Reporting Act that's there for you. This is the big one, kind of the big legal, one of the major parts of consumer protections for fraud. One of the things there is, making certain that accounts are accurate, fair, and timely. Also that your privacy is protected there through, that's what allows us to go back and look at our credit file and dispute those sorts of things. So when we think about being a victim of fraud, obviously we have the ability to dispute that information of those purchases. Again, the sooner the better for the protections under the law. And then also place a security freeze, whether this is an initial fraud alert, which is 1 year, or you can put an extended fraud alert on for as long as 7 years. So that initial fraud alert that you would place on locks everything down for a year. If you've had, significant type of fraud take place, and I've seen this in divorce settings and all sorts of different contexts where, again, fraud has taken place. This would be a way that you just keep the other party completely out of the account. Extended frauds up to 7 years. Oftentimes, as you get into credit and rebuilding your score, you'll take that fraud alert off and kind of continue to move forward. But these do offer protections to keep others out of your account. And then there's also some information here for active duty. If we have anyone who's in the military, again, 1 year, or you can place those on for longer if you are deployed or in military. And then lastly, as we close, any type of fraud or anything that's taking place, always contact your card issuer immediately. If you have any accounts with the credit union, we want to contact and speak to staff and let them know that there's been something that just doesn't look right. So we want to contact and make certain that we let folks know that there is some type of issue. If you believe you've been a victim of fraud or a scam, first line that you want to go to would be the first line of legal enforcement is your local law enforcement. These cases are done at the local level. FTC and others, they collect a lot of statistics on things, but in terms of prosecutions and going after someone that you believe has committed fraud, it's a local law enforcement issue. So in this case, you contact law enforcement, you obtain a copy of the law enforcement report, and we want to use that as we dispute information or move forward. Contacting the credit bureaus themselves. I've got the numbers listed here for you. So if you have a dispute or if you just want to place a credit freeze, we want to do that across all 3 bureaus. The bureaus do not talk to each other. So I have the numbers here listed for you so that if you do have any issues, you want to put a year credit freeze, an initial credit freeze on, and you do that with Equifax and you want to do it with the others, you got to do it across all 3. So here are the numbers for you to contact the folks there. So any questions about how to contact the bureaus outside of these or dispute questions, just let me know. And then just thinking about fraud and why it's so important and why I appreciate you being on the call today. Prosecution rates for these types of cases extremely low, 5%. So 1 in 700 cases are actually going to go to court. So again, it's our effort and our work that's going to keep this from happening. We can do, the more knowledgeable, the more engaged we are, that's what's going to keep us, I think, safe. Again, what makes this so difficult? Multiple jurisdictions, oftentimes a lack of evidence. Sometimes, again, I hate to say it, if a family member has done it, folks don't always want to report that someone in the family is the one who actually made the purchases and did not pay. And then sometimes it's just not discovered until much later in a loss. It's too difficult to prosecute. So do the work. If you have questions, we want you to be able to contact us. Keep a good close look at your bank accounts. Look at your transaction history. Don't allow synthetic fraud to occur. Pull a credit report. I can do that for you. Contact me. I'd be glad to pull a credit report for you. It is free as a member of Educational Community Alliance Credit Union. And I'll work directly with Beth and others to make sure that if there are issues, we'll help you obtain a line of credit or take steps to rebuild your score. So lots of information for you today. Again, I appreciate everything. And I want to just say thank you for everyone for your time and thank you for joining us. Keep a watch out. We will be doing more webinars in the coming months, and we'll have other interesting topics to come your way. So thank you very much for joining us. Beth?
Again, yeah, absolutely. And again, Todd, I do want to thank you as well. So one of the things I wanted to make a comment to those that are listening, Todd Todd on a number of occasions had mentioned Cincinnati, Ohio. So I just want you to know that, Trinity Debt Management has been a partner of Educational Community Alliance for years. They've been around since 1994. They are our arm for credit counseling, debt management questions that Todd has said, hey, just reach out to me. So we have a lot of faith in what Trinity Debt Management offers our members and thus that partnership. So keep in mind, even though he's from Cincinnati, that southern part of the state, recognize that we are absolutely 100% supporting them as they are supporting us and giving us that content that we so deeply necessarily need for you and for our members. Real quick before we disconnect, Todd, I wanted to mention one thing to you as well. I had two just this week examples of some fraud that's happening. It has to do with Microsoft. So members had been receiving phone calls on two occasions. Again, we're pretty small entity, but you still have two of our members, potentially your family members, potentially your coworkers, that received a call from Microsoft claiming that there was a problem with their account, encouraged them to withdraw large sums of money from their account. And not only that, they basically were tricked. They were basically being told, the credit union in our case is involved with this. So they're going to ask you these questions. They're going to try to encourage you not to withdraw. They're going to suggest you take a check. They're not going to want you to have this, but they're in on it. And it's extremely alarming to us, Todd, and you know, and you've heard these stories and you've captured some of the highlights. One of my worst conversations is sitting across from a member that has fallen victim to this, and we shake our heads and it's sickening to me. It's very, very personal. So therefore, this is one of the reasons why we share this information with you so that we can arm ourselves with as many defenses as possible. We want you to trust us as your financial institution. We want you to feel that you can call, sit down with us, and if we don't have answers, we'll use our community partners like Todd and Trinity Debt Management to get some answers if we don't have it. But trust who you have your account relationship with. Trust us. And then if not, call the Better Business Bureau. I say that over and over because if you're really being told to lie, which in our cases, they were told to lie, we teach our children, if a kid is potentially going to be kidnapped, we teach them up front, don't be tricked, right? Be smarter than them. And we're just doing everything we can. We're all guilty of believing things to be true or being very cautious, but let's be even more cautious and don't rush into anything. Take the time to do the homework. So with that, Todd, I wanted to share that because that is very real, very raw, very
Glad you did. Yeah.
And those are two exact examples. Another one, just our staff meeting this morning, we had two people. I was one of them that received, the Bureau, the Bureau of Motor Vehicles text saying, hey, you didn't pay your bill and such. And I wasn't the only one that received that. I had another staff member. So think about it. If they go out, push out hundreds or thousands of these texts, they only want one or two. I mean, they can make a couple $1,000s on us pretty quickly. So just some real examples that I wanted to just add on to what Todd has already provided. And keep an eye out for additional education sessions. Look at our website. Feel free to reach out to us, to Todd directly, or through us. We'll connect with Todd and or a counselor at Trinity Debt Management. So with that, Todd, I'm sure you're not surprised by a little comment, but we will certainly be sharing more information to our members. So thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you, Beth. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.